puts her hand on your shoulder, right?
Right.
Got
Okay.
it.
Let me ask you that again because that was interesting. So, why would you not recommend wrestling for people that just say they want to improve their jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I get people all the time. They're like, "Oh, I'm doing jujitsu. Should I learn a little bit of wrestling to improve my jujitsu?" And I'm like, "No, absolutely not. No point." Because the benefit of wrestling is not that you know a little bit. It's not that you know the techniques. It's that you endure the grind. You
Hmm.
do all the conditioning, all the strength, all the pain, all the things that go with the perseverance. And you can't learn that by somebody teaching you a couple of techniques once a week. When people want to add like a wrestling class once a week or something, I'm like, it's pointless.
So it's not like, hey, this is stab me this way, not this way. Like it's
Yeah,
like you get the Russian and then you
yeah,
hold it because that's the thing I try and get my students to do is like don't just get it, you have to keep it. You have to be able to keep it and
yeah,
apply
yeah.
that downward pressure. Because like frustrates me when people get a Russian, they just hold it. Like when you have a
Right. So,
Russian,
so like,
they should be burying your weight. They should be like
yeah,
you should be cumbersome. They should not want to be there.
you should be using it in some way. Yeah. In fact, let's contextualize that because I think we said that off air. But I was telling you that I was with an MMA friend and we were doing wrestling for MMA. And another journalist friend of mine came over and he trained with us just that one day. And we were working on the Russian. And so the journalist friend who's not a wrestler, he goes, "Oh, but are you going to remember that technique when somebody grabs you in an alley?" And it hit me that if you didn't know what we were doing, it looks like a typical self-defense class because it's, somebody puts their hand on your shoulder and, you pull it off this way or that way. It looks exactly like what you learn in a self-defense class, but it's not. It's the Russian, the wrestling technique. And what did we do? We taught it, we drilled it, and then we sparred. And when somebody puts their hand on your shoulder, yeah, absolutely. That's how you get their hand off your shoulder,
And the
right?
Russian is for people who don't know is like a move where you like others call it a 2-on-1 because they're racist. They don't want to give credit where credit's due. I mean, the body only has two arms. Somebody would have figured it out. Not just the Russians, but the Russians were good at it, right? So hold the arm with two arms, right? 2-on-1.
Yeah,
I think Dan Gable
and
would
then
argue with you.
if you go from like freestyle or Greco, you go to like catch wrestling. So like in freestyle or Greco, you're controlling their arm with two arms and you're kind of stretching it across your chest, right? With catch, you actually can submit in that position. You can actually just push your chest forward on their elbow and
Hmm.
actually enough that it submits them. Or you can put enough pressure on them that you can take them down to the ground.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so the catch version of it's here. But again, I just taught you that like one time, it's not going to benefit you. It's and the other thing, like in China, when I was on the wrestling team, we would pummel every day like 30 minutes. But we had different pummeling, and one of the pummeling is Russian pummeling. So we'd pummel the
You mean
Russian
just
30
over
minutes
under
a
over
day.
under?
Well, that's regular pummeling.
Oh, Russian
And
pummeling's
then
different.
yeah, because regular pummeling is 50-50, right? Collar and elbow. You start collar and elbow, or you start 50-50, and you go over and under, right? That's regular pummeling.
Okay.
What position do you start regular pummeling in?
Chest to chest.
Yeah, chest to chest, 50-50, over and under. That's what we call it, 50-50 or over and under.
Uh
Right?
huh.
I got one arm under your, and you got one arm under mine, and that's
But
how
the
we start
Russian
pummeling,
style is
right?
different.
So Russian, well, yeah, I have you in a Russian. I hold you in a Russian,
Oh, I see.
and then you,
Not that
and
Russians
then
do it. It's pummel from the Russian position.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
I see.
okay, okay, okay,
I
okay.
thought you meant
Yeah,
like
no,
Russians do it a different way, which
yeah,
I can
no,
totally
no.
buy
Actually, I don't know
because
what Russians do. The insanity of my life is that although we speak Russian at training, I've never been to Russia. I don't know anything about what Russians do, but we
okay.
speak Russian in training every day.
Well, I watch them on Instagram, so I'm pretty much an expert.
There you go. You've got
Instagram.
the internet. Yeah,
Yeah.
but we do. So like in China, we would do where I hold you in a Russian, and then the coach says go, and you try and get me in a Russian. That's the defense. I got you in a Russian, and you try and transition to getting me in the Russian, and I got you in the Russian, and it's a flow, but you could do it really hard too, just like you can with regular pummeling, where you could just be absolutely knackered and all your muscles pumped and
Hmm.
dripping sweat.
I see.
And so we had a bunch of different. There's that one. There's like go behind pummeling, where you're behind me and get me basically in a bear hug from behind, and then I got to escape and spin around and get behind you.
Hmm.
But you do that, it's very different than what you do in a self-defense class.
Right. So I think that's crazy that we're talking about this subject, but I think it's definitely important. Like the concept of situational sparring or going through situations. Like if you're not handling situations in a low pressure environment, how can you expect to handle situations in a high stress environment? And I assume with somebody attacking you is going to be high stress,
Yep.
right?
And one of the points I always make about how preposterous self-defense classes are and how stupid they are is that, in MMA, wrestling, martial arts, your fighter, combat sport, you're fighting a guy that is trained, that has
Hmm.
been in other fights, been kicked in the
Right.
face, that's been headbutted, that knows all these things and just freaking endures the pain.
Well,
And
how do
in a
you
self,
feel about that? I wonder because I see so many things like, oh, like I saw a video like Shaolin or what Kung Fu is not allowed in the UFC because it's too dangerous.
oh, that's
And
idiotic.
and
That's
like
idiotic.
I get it. Like if
That's
your
idiotic.
discipline is just kicking people in the nuts, then yeah, or throat grabs. But
No, first of all, Kung
I
Fu is
understand there's
allowed. First of all,
benefits
first of
to
all,
it,
all these stories are nonsense. I mean, of course, Kung Fu is allowed in UFC. Of
right? Of
course it
course it
is.
is. But when you say
Of
that,
course,
it's gonna
self-defense
get
is allowed. It just
more
doesn't
attention.
work. Yeah, it just doesn't work. I mean, that's the issue. I mean, if it worked, everybody would be doing it. I mean, look at all the strikers that didn't know any grappling, right? And then they all went out and learned grappling because it works, not because they're stupid people, but because it works. How many strikers didn't know how to box and they went out and learned Western boxing because it's the absolute most effective form of punching. And if
Mm.
Kung Fu worked, people learn it, but it doesn't work. If Kung Fu worked, where's the champions?
Well, I wouldn't say there's no value in it, but if you're going to, it depends on what you're, what
Well, you're also not Italian.
what's that?
Right? Like I would say, there's no value in it. But we're very different people. You're a nice person. You're a nice person from like flyover land, and I'm an Italian person from New York, and I would say no, there's no value.
Oh, okay, I'm being too nice.
See, we're very different people.
No, I mean for interest, I love judo, right? I love judo,
Right.
but I
Right.
think all applications are not useful. Like you don't
Yes.
need to get ippon, you just need to be in control. Like in that sense, I'm almost like American wrestling, God forbid I say it, has a better philosophy because we emphasize constant control,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
think is maybe not the most interesting to watch, but
Yeah.
the most strategically valuable. Then, hey, I made your feet go this way, I made your ribs turn this way, I win. It's easier to
We
watch, it's
had
easier to enjoy, but not necessarily as important.
Yeah, no, I agree. We had this old Brazilian guy at my gym in Malaysia when I was fighting full time. He was a really funny guy, and I loved him. And he watched one of my fights, and I was getting a reputation for having the most boring fights because I just take people down and just grind them down on the ground until I won. And he watched the fight, and he was like literally ecstatic. Like his eyes were like this big, and he's like, "Oh, Antonio, what's going on?" It's not like the fact that I controlled the opponent from bell to bell to him was like just the greatest feat of fighting. Whereas the American audience or the Asian audience was watching, it's so boring. You're just holding the guy down, and this guy was like, "Let's go on."
Right, it makes you wonder like
Yeah,
different cultural expectations or whatever. I mean, I guess what you want for the TV, but yeah, it's just a constant argument. I think we're always gonna
right.
have. We're never gonna not
No,
have that
but
argument.
look, I mean, I'm an economist by trade,
Uh
and
huh.
I never am looking for the opinion. I'm always looking for factual data, objective data that I can use to prove a position. We arrive at a conclusion, we prove it with data.
Okay.
And that's why I don't understand how we're still having this conversation. How the hell are people saying we have the data? Wrestling wins. Full stop. Full stop. Done. Wrestling wins. Show me the data. There's like three karate guys that have done phenomenally in UFC,
Right. So
and I'm
everybody
not
says,
going
"Oh,
to
it works because three people in the world can do
exactly.
it." That
That
means it's
three out of
the
thousands. And all three, one of the commonalities is that their father and I believe grandfather were karate masters. And he grew up like third generation, but Leota Machida, Wonder Boy, and what's the guy that's sort of like Osage Northcutt? Like those three guys. And I'm not gonna put GSP in that category because GSP,
JSP is a tradesman.
yeah, he just went out and learned everything, and he's just famous for being able to learn everything. But guys who look like karate when they're fighting, there's like three of them in the
Mm.
history of UFC. Maybe you could put Chuck Liddell in there if you want to, but even
Yeah,
Chuck Liddell wrestled in
Chuck
college.
Liddell's his own creature though.
Yeah,
Chuck
and
Liddell,
he
yeah.
wrestled in college. I mean, he's a three-time All-American. I think twice at junior college level, maybe, and something like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know why people are having the debate. There is nothing to debate. It's been determined. And judo, let's talk about judo. Like, I love
God
judo.
forbid.
I love judo. You're in Japan. Don't let them hear this. No, but I love judo, and I think it's great. If you have like an anemic daughter or something,
Ow, we're going there. You're going there hard.
if like you had a baby born with the heart on the outside and wrestling would damage them, then you know.
Ooh, you throwing dirt, son. Throwing
No,
that dirt.
seriously, I love judo. I love judo, and on paper, judo should be like one of the most dominant arts, but it's not.
Well, I
And
mean,
essentially,
when we say judo, right? I think we're talking about whatever IGF approves of, right? But that's not what, Kosin was. That's not necessarily what Kano was doing or Maeda was doing. Uh, you know, People have like changed the rules so people can watch it eat more
yep,
easily, more lay people can
yep.
watch it, enjoy it. How the victor is more clear. They want a clearer form of victory and not by points. Because back when they
And
had
all
kokas,
the Kosen judo
you could
people,
get a point for taking somebody down.
right, right,
And so they changed that because they want to see people do the
the flip
the
in the air.
throw. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean that's
Yeah,
the
and all the Kosen judo guys that I know that failed to win in MMA use that argument. I mean, it's just amazing. It's like I talked to a Kosen judo guy, and he's like, "Oh, but Kosen judo, and it's better in this." And I agree with you.
no,
Okay,
it
where are
was.
your trophies? Where are your trophies? Where are your wins?
No, I'm not talking about the people that are claiming it nowadays. They're
Yeah,
just looking for a platform. It doesn't
yeah, yeah,
exist.
yeah,
It doesn't exist.
yeah,
But Coulson is what made BJJ.
yeah.
You know.
But I mean, but how far back do you want to go? Because I mean, you figure all judo came out of jujitsu, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Consider
that's the argument. Yeah, cool.
jujitsu is the source of everything, even karate. Everything came from jujitsu.
Well, I mean, Japan just called everything jujitsu for like 500
Everything
years.
was jujitsu.
Everything was
Yeah,
jujitsu. If you threw a rock, it was jujitsu. You
yeah.
know.
I'm
If
like
you
that with
wrestled, it
catch
was
wrestling.
jujitsu. So it's
Every
not
time
really even
somebody tells me
fair.
I fouled them, I say no, it's catch wrestling.
Those stinky catch wrestlers.
Because there's no unified rule set, so who knows? It
Hey,
might
let's
be
pop.
legal.
And so let's see if we can pop out and pop back in.
Sure.
Because if Lavelle comes, I think
Okay.
the meeting will